massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a glowing metal city. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports every day. Inside its gleaming halls, the most important business in the galaxy took place. Today, that business would change everything. Ambassador Kyungmin walked through the long corridors of the station. His black diplomatic uniform was simple and clean. Behind him, 3 other humans followed in silence. They were Hannah, the trade expert with sharp eyes behind wire glasses; Taeho, the military advisor who moved like a cat; and Jiwoo, the young diplomat who always smiled softly. The 4 humans drew stares from alien beings as they passed. A tall blue creature with too many arms whispered to its companion. A group of floating jellyfish-like beings pulsed with worried colors. Word had spread quickly through the station. The humans were in serious trouble. The grand negotiation chamber stood at the heart of Nexus Prime. Its doors were 30 feet tall and made of polished metal that reflected the faces of everyone who entered. Today, those doors opened to reveal the most important meeting in human history. Kung Min stepped inside first. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. Curved rows of seats rose up like steps in an ancient theater, and in those seats sat the representatives of 12 different alien species. At the center sat the Vorthog delegation. These beings looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk on 2 legs. Their scales were dark green, and their eyes were yellow like old gold. Their leader, High Counselor Dex-9, was bigger than the others. Scars covered his snout and neck. He had been a warrior before becoming a politician. To the left were the Clixians. They looked like huge insects with 6 legs and 4 arms. Their bodies were covered in shiny black armor that was actually their skin. They moved in perfect unison, never speaking to each other, but somehow always knowing what the others were thinking. It was creepy to watch. On the right sat the Zephyrites. These beings were made of living crystal. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Light moved through their transparent bodies in patterns that showed their emotions. Right now, those patterns were angry, red, and orange. The other 9 species filled the remaining seats. Some were covered in fur. Others had no faces that humans could recognize. A few floated in tanks of strange liquid. All of them were staring at the 4 humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hostility. Kyung-Min led his team to the small table at the bottom of the chamber. It looked tiny compared to the massive alien seating areas. The humans sat down quietly. Kunmin placed his datapad on the table and folded his hands. High Counselor Dex-9 stood up. Its massive form cast a shadow over the human delegation. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "Humans of Earth," he began, "you stand before the Galactic Trade Consortium. We represent the civilized species of this galaxy. For too long, we have watched your kind spread across the stars like a disease." Kyungmin did not react. His face remained calm. He picked up a pen and began taking notes on his datapad. "Your species is young and violent," Vex-9 continued. "You have no respect for the ancient ways. You take what you want without asking. You settle on worlds that other species have claimed for centuries." The other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. As some clicked their mandibles, others flashed colors through their crystal bodies. A few just stared with unblinking eyes. "The time has come to put limits on human expansion," Dex-9 said. His yellow eyes glowed brighter. "We have prepared terms that you will accept. These terms are not up for discussion." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of local space with human colonies marked in red. As the aliens watched, most of the red dots began blinking and turning gray. First, Dex-9 announced, humans will withdraw from the entire Kepler sector. This includes 47 colonies and 15 mining stations. These worlds would be redistributed among the member species of the consortium. Hannah wrote something on her own datapad. Her expression did not change. Second, the Vorthok leader continued. All human trade vessels will pay a special tax of 300% on all goods moved through consortium space. This tax will fund programs to repair the damage your species has caused. The holographic display changed to show trade routes. Human ships were marked with bright warning symbols. Third, Dexton said, and his voice grew even more threatening. All humans involved in interstellar activities will undergo behavioral modification. Our scientists have developed programs to reduce your species' aggressive tendencies. This is for the good of the entire galaxy. The chamber fell silent. The only sound was the soft humming of the station's life support systems. All eyes turned to the human delegation. Kyung-min finished writing his notes. He looked up at the towering alien leader. His voice was quiet but clear. "Thank you for presenting your proposal," he said politely. "We will need time to discuss this among ourselves." Dex 9 blinked his yellow eyes slowly. "Time. There is nothing to discuss. These are not suggestions. They are commands." "Nevertheless," Kungmin replied, "we require 48 hours to consider your terms." The aliens began talking among themselves. Clixians made rapid clicking sounds. The Zephyrite flashed confused purple colors. Several of the smaller species began chattering in their own languages. Dex 9 raised one massive clawed hand for silence. "Very well," he said. "You have 48 hours. But understand this, humans. When you return, you will accept our terms. There is no other option." Double quotes. Kyung-min stood up. His team followed. "We understand perfectly," he said. Then he gathered his datapad and walked toward the chamber doors. As the humans left, the aliens watched them go. Something felt wrong, but they could not figure out what it was. The humans had not argued. They had not threatened. They had not even seemed upset. They had simply listened and walked away. High Counselor Dex9 settled back into his seat. Round him, the other alien leaders were already celebrating. They had faced down the notorious humans without a fight. In 2 days, they would have everything they wanted, but deep in his warrior's heart, Dex9 felt a small, cold fear beginning to grow. In all his years of negotiation and warfare, he had never seen a species react this way to an ultimatum. The humans had been too calm, too quiet, too ready to simply walk away. And that, he was beginning to realize, might be the most dangerous thing of all. The human delegation quarters were located in Section C of Nexus Prime. The rooms were simple but comfortable. Each person had a bedroom, a small office, and access to a common area with a kitchen and dining table. There was nothing fancy, but it served their needs. Outside, in the corridors, small floating cameras followed the humans wherever they went. These spy devices belonged to the alien intelligence networks. Every species in the consortium wanted to know what the humans were planning. During their 48-hour break, the camera operators expected to see panic. They thought they would watch desperate humans making frantic calls to Earth. They prepared to record emergency meetings and heated arguments about how to respond to the ultimatum. Instead, they saw something that made no sense at all. Kyung-min returned to his quarters and changed out of his formal diplomatic uniform. He put on simple gray clothes and walked to the common area. There, he found Ji-woo preparing tea with careful movements. The young diplomat had brought her own tea leaves from Earth. The smell filled the room with a gentle, peaceful scent. "Was the meeting?" Ji-woo asked quietly as she poured hot water over the leaves. "About what we expected," Kungmin replied. He sat down at the table and accepted the cup she offered him. "They want the Kepler colonies, heavy trade taxes, and behavioral modification programs." Ji-woo nodded as if they were discussing the weather. The full package then. Yes, the full package. That was the entire conversation about the ultimatum. Then they talked about the tea and how the station's artificial gravity felt different from Earth's natural pull. In the intelligence monitoring centers, alien technicians stared at their screens in confusion. Where was the panic? Where were the emergency communications? The humans were drinking tea and talking about gravity. Hannah emerged from her room an hour later. She carried a small book with worn pages. The title was written in Korean characters that the alien translation computers could not read. She sat in a comfortable chair by the window that looked out at the stars and began reading. The spy cameras zoomed in on the book, trying to understand what could be so important that a human diplomat would read it during a galactic crisis. The alien intelligence analysts ran every scan they could think of. They checked for hidden codes, secret messages, and encrypted data. The book was a collection of ancient Korean poetry, nothing more. Hannah read for 2 hours without stopping. Sometimes she smiled softly at a particular poem. She laughed quietly at something that amused her. The sound made the alien observers even more nervous. Why was she laughing when her entire species faced destruction? As evening approached by the station's artificial day cycle, Taeho appeared in the common area. The military advisor had changed into exercise clothes. He rolled out a mat on the floor and began a series of slow, controlled movements. The alien watchers recognized this as some form of combat training. Finally, they thought, here was a normal response. The human warrior was preparing for battle, but Taeho's movements were nothing like combat preparation. He moved like water, flowing over stones. His breathing was deep and steady. His eyes were closed, and his face was completely peaceful. Tease, he practicing some new fighting technique, asked a Clixian intelligence officer. Run a full analysis, ordered his superior. Map every movement. This could be preparation for some unknown martial art. The computers worked for hours analyzing Taeho's movements. They found no weapons patterns, no combat techniques, no preparation for violence. The human was simply meditating in motion, finding inner calm through ancient exercises. This made the aliens even more worried. Later that night, when most of the station was quiet, Ji-woo made her way to the hydroponics bay. This was where the station grew fresh food for its inhabitants. She had permission to use a small corner of the facility for her own plants. The spy cameras followed her through the empty corridors. They watched as she tended to a tiny garden of earth plants. She had brought seeds with her and had been growing them during their stay at the station. Jae-woo checked the soil moisture with her fingers. She trimmed dead leaves with small scissors. She talked softly to the plants as if they were old friends. The cameras recorded every word but found nothing suspicious. She was simply caring for her garden. The roses are doing well, she said, to a small, flowering plant. You remind me of the ones my grandmother grew. In the intelligence centers, alien analysts played this recording over and over. They searched for hidden meanings, code words, or secret messages. They found nothing but a young woman talking to her flowers. But somehow, it made them more afraid than if she had been building bombs. Meanwhile, Kyung-min had settled into his routine as if nothing unusual was happening. He ate a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. He read reports from Earth about trade negotiations with peaceful alien species. K answered routine emails about diplomatic schedules. At no point did he send any emergency messages. He made no calls to Earth's military command. He did not contact any allies or request help from other species. The alien intelligence networks were going crazy trying to understand what they were seeing. They had prepared for every possible human response except this one. They had plans to intercept military communications, to track secret alliance meetings, to decode desperate pleas for help. They were completely unprepared for humans who simply continued their normal daily routines. "Something is wrong," reported the Vorthok intelligence chief to High Counselor Dex-9. "The humans are not behaving like a species under threat." "What do you mean?" Dex-9 asked. "They are too calm, too normal. One is reading poetry. Another is exercising. The third is gardening. Their leader is doing paperwork. None of this makes sense." Dex-9 felt that cold fear in his chest grow a little stronger. Are they stupid? Do they not understand what we told them? Our translators confirmed that they understood every word perfectly. They know exactly what we demanded. But they are acting as if none of it matters. Across the station, similar reports were reaching other alien leaders. The Clixian hive mind was buzzing with confusion. Their shared consciousness could not process the human behavior. Every species they had ever encountered followed predictable patterns when threatened: keep, flee, or negotiate desperately. The humans were doing none of these things. The Zephyrites were flashing anxious collars throughout their crystalline forms. Their emotion-reading abilities told them that the humans felt no fear, no anger, no desperation. Instead, they sensed something far more unsettling. They sensed confidence, not the aggressive confidence of a species preparing for war, not the desperate confidence of beings bluffing their way out of trouble. This was something else entirely. It was the quiet confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing, even if nobody else did, and that terrified the aliens more than any threat ever could. The 48 hours had passed. The great chamber of Nexus Prime was even more crowded than before. Word had spread throughout the station that something important was happening. Representatives from other species had come to watch. News reporters from across the galaxy waited in the observation galleries. High Counselor Dex-9 sat in his massive chair. But he did not feel as confident as he had 2 days ago. The intelligence reports had disturbed him. The humans had done nothing, absolutely nothing. They had lived their normal lives as if the ultimatum meant nothing to them around him. The other alien leaders showed signs of nervousness. The Clixian delegation was making more clicking sounds than usual. The Zephyrites were flashing worried purple colors through their crystal bodies. Even the smaller species seemed on edge. "They will surrender," muttered a Vorthok advisor. "They have to. No species can survive isolation from the consortium." But Dex-9 was not so sure anymore. He had been a warrior long before he became a politician. In battle, he had learned to read his enemies. The dangerous ones were not always the ones who roared and charged. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the quiet ones, the ones who waited. The chamber doors opened with their usual deep sound. The 4 humans entered just as they had 2 days before. Kyung Min led the way, wearing the same simple black diplomatic uniform. Behind him came Hannah with her datapad, Taeho with his alert eyes, and Ji-woo with her gentle smile. They walked to their small table at the bottom of the chamber. Every alien I followed them. The humans sat down in the same order as before. Kyung Min placed his datapad on the table and folded his hands. The silence stretched for long seconds. In the observation galleries, news reporters leaned forward. This was the moment that would determine the future of human expansion in the galaxy. "Well," Dex-9 demanded. His voice was harsher than he intended. "Have you reached a decision on our terms?" Kungmin looked up at the towering alien leader. His face was calm and peaceful. He appeared to be thinking carefully about his words. The entire chamber held its breath. "We decline," Kungmin said. 2 words, nothing more. He did not shout them or speak them with anger. He did not explain them or add conditions. He simply stated a fact, the way someone might say the sky is blue. The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the chamber stared at the small human delegation. This was not how negotiations worked. This was not how any species had ever responded to an ultimatum from the consortium. A Clixian representative was the first to break the silence. "You decline?" The insect-like being's voice was high and sharp. "Perhaps you do not understand. You're not making a request. We are telling you what will happen." Kyung Min nodded politely. "We understand perfectly. Then why do you refuse?" Clixian's forearms waved in agitation. "Do you think you can fight all of us? Do you have secret weapons we do not know about?" "Li have no secret weapons," Kung Min replied. Kyung Min replied, "We simply decline your terms." Dex Nin leaned forward in his massive chair. His yellow eyes glowed brighter with anger and confusion. "You cannot simply decline. That is not how this works. You must negotiate. You must make counteroffers. You must try to find compromise." "Why?" asked Kyung Min. The simple question hit the chamber like a physical blow. Every alien delegate felt it. Why? It was such a basic question, but none of them had a good answer. "Because that is how civilized species behave," Dex 9 said. Finally, "According to whom?" Skillman asked. Another impossible question. The Lians looked at each other uncertainly. The rules of galactic negotiation had existed for thousands of years. Every species followed them. It was just the way things were done. A Zephyrite delegate flashed angry red colors through its crystal body. "You are being unreasonable. We have superior numbers. We control the major trade routes. We can destroy your colonies and blockade Earth itself." "Yes," Kung Min agreed. "You probably can." The admission should have been satisfying to the aliens. Instead, it made them more nervous. The human was admitting their power, but he did not seem afraid of it. "Then, why do you not surrender?" asked a furry creature from the back rows. "Because we choose not to," Kung Min said simply. Hannah shifted in her chair and spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but clear. "May I ask you something?" she said to the assembled aliens. "What?" Dexnai snapped. "What exactly do you want from us?" The question seemed absurd. "We told you what we want. The Kepler colonies, trade taxes, behavioral modification." "No," Hannah said patiently. "Me, what do you really want? What is the goal behind all these demands?" The aliens exchanged glances. Some whispered to each other in their own languages. The question was simple, but the answer was not. "We want peace in the galaxy," said a Zephyrite delegate. "We want order," added a Clixian. "We want to protect our established territories," said another voice. Hannah nodded as if she understood completely. "And do you believe that controlling human expansion will achieve these goals?" "Yes," several aliens said at once, "even if it means war." The chamber fell silent again. The aliens had not thought about this contradiction. They wanted peace, but they were threatening war to get it. Teho spoke next. His voice was calm like still water. "You seem to believe that humans are naturally aggressive, that we seek conflict with other species. You expand too quickly," accused a Vorthok advisor. "You take worlds without asking permission. We settle uninhabited worlds," Teho corrected gently. "We have never taken a world that belonged to another species. You refuse to follow consortium regulations," said a Clixian. "We were never invited to join the consortium," Ji Wu pointed out with her soft smile. "How can we follow rules that were made without us?" The aliens realized they were being backed into a corner by simple logic and quiet questions. They humans were not arguing with them. They were not making threats or angry demands. They were just asking questions and stating facts. Somehow, this was far more unsettling than any aggressive response would have been. Kung-Min stood up slowly. His team followed his lead. "We appreciate your concerns about our species," he said politely, "but we must respectfully decline your terms." "Where are you going?" Vex9 demanded. "Back to our quarters," Kyung Min replied. "Unless you have something else to discuss, we are not finished here." Kung Min paused at the edge of their table. "With respect, counselor, I believe we are. You have made your demands. We have given our answer. What else is there to say? The human delegation began walking toward the chamber doors. Every step they took seemed to echo in the vast space. The aliens watched them go with growing panic. This was not how negotiations ended. Species were supposed to keep talking until someone gave in. But the humans were simply leaving, as if the entire meeting had been a minor inconvenience. As the doors closed behind the human delegation, the chamber erupted in confused voices. Every alien was talking at once, but none of them had any idea what to do next. For the first time in galactic history, the species had simply walked away from the consortium's demands without explanation, argument, or fear. And that silence was more terrifying than any threat could ever be. The hours after the humans left the chamber were unlike anything in the history of the Galactic Trade Consortium. The alien delegates did not return to their quarters as usual. Instead, they gathered in small groups throughout Nexus Prime, whispering and arguing in hushed voices. High Counselor Dex-9 called an emergency meeting in his private conference room. The other major leaders crowded around a table that was too small for all of them. The Clixian delegates stood because their insect bodies did not fit in normal chairs. The Zephyrite dimmed their crystal forms to avoid blinding the others with their nervous flashing. What just happened in there? Demanded a Vorthok general named Krath 5. His scales were darker than Dex-9's, and old battle scars covered his arms. I have fought in 17 wars. I have negotiated with savage species from the Outer Rim. I have never seen anything like this. The humans are insane, clicked a Clixian drone. They must be. No rational species would refuse our terms without even trying to negotiate. They are not insane, said a Zephyrite, whose crystal body flashed worried blue patterns. Our emotion sensors read them clearly. They feel no madness, no confusion, no desperation. They are completely calm and rational. Then explain their behavior. Vex 9 growled. Nobody could dot in another part of the station. The smaller alien species were having their own emergency meetings. The furry Pelians were chattering excitedly in their high voices. The slug-like Morphians were leaving worried slime trails on the floor as they moved. Even the usually silent Voidlings were communicating through rapid light flashes. My people have been part of the consortium for 800 years, said Elder Pelian Frix 9. Never has a species simply walked away from negotiations. What if they have allies we do not know about? Worried a Morphian diplomat. What if they have made secret agreements with other powers? The humans have been in space for less than 200 years, pointed out a Voidling through its translation device. They are too young to have developed such connections, but doubt was spreading like a virus through the alien community. If the humans were not afraid, if they were not desperate, if they were not even trying to negotiate, then what did they know that the consortium did not? Meanwhile, the intelligence networks were working overtime. Every spy camera, every listening device, every monitoring system on the station was focused on the human quarters. The alien analysts were desperate to understand. The humans were planning. What they saw made no sense at all. Kungman had returned to his quarters and was now sitting at his small desk, writing what appeared to be a letter. The spy cameras zoomed in on the paper, but he was writing in Korean characters that their computers struggled to translate. The letter was addressed to his daughter. Back on Earth, he was telling her about the interesting architecture of Nexus Prime and asking about her school grades. There was no mention of the negotiations, no discussion of military plans, no coded messages about secret strategies. He was writing about homework and space stations. Dana had gone back to her poetry book. She was reading the same poems she had read during the recess, but now she was making small notes in the margins. The alien intelligence teams analyzed every mark she made, looking for hidden meanings or secret codes. The notes were about the beauty of the language and how certain phrases reminded her of her grandmother's garden. Nothing more. Tay-Ho was in the common area, preparing a simple meal. He moved around the small kitchen with the same calm precision he showed in everything else. He chopped vegetables with steady hands and hummed an old Korean song while he cooked. The spy cameras recorded every ingredient he used, every movement he made, every note he hummed. The analysts searched for patterns, for hidden signals, for anything that might explain his behavior. They found a man making dinner and enjoying music. From his homeland, Ji-woo was the most puzzling of all. She had returned to the hydroponics bay to check on her small garden, but instead of tending her plants, she was sitting on the floor next to them with her eyes closed. She was very still, breathing slowly and deeply. "Is she in some kind of trance?" asked a Clixian intelligence officer. "Run a full medical scan," ordered his superior. "Check for unusual brain activity, psychic phenomena, communication, implants." The scanners found nothing unusual. Ji-woo was simply meditating, finding peace in a quiet moment between the plant lights and the soft hum of the station systems. But her stillness was somehow more frightening than if she had been building weapons or sending secret messages. As the hours passed, panic began to spread through the alien leadership. Emergency meetings were called. Intelligence reports were shared. Military advisors were consulted. Trade experts ran calculations about what would happen if humans were completely cut off from galactic commerce. The results were disturbing. "Earth is almost completely self-sufficient," reported a consortium trade analyst. "They import some luxury goods and rare minerals, but they do not depend on us for survival." "What about their colonies?" asked Dex-9. "The same. Human colonies are designed to be independent. They can survive indefinitely without outside support." Military capabilities unknown. Our intelligence on human military technology is limited. They have never used their full strength against any consortium member. This last point was especially troubling. Every other species in the galaxy had been tested in battle at some point. Their weapons, their strategies, their limits were all known quantities. The humans were a complete mystery. "We know they defeated the Zarmak pirates," said General Krath 5. "But the Zarmak were poorly organized raiders. That tells us nothing about what humans could do against a real military force." "We test them," suggested a Clixian commander. The chamber fell silent. The idea of actually fighting the humans was suddenly much less appealing than it had seemed a few days ago. Meanwhile, reports were coming in from consortium colonies near human space. The humans were continuing their normal activities as if nothing had happened. Human trade ships were still following their regular routes. Human diplomats were still attending scheduled meetings with friendly species. There was no military buildup, no evacuation of civilians, no preparation for war. The humans were acting as if the consortium ultimatum had never been given. "Perhaps they are calling our bluff," suggested a Pelian advisor. "Perhaps they believe we will not follow through on our threats." "Then they are fools," snarled Dex-9. "We have the power to destroy them." "Do we?" asked the Zephyrite, delegate quietly. The question hung in the air like poison gas. Did they really have the power to destroy humanity? They had superior numbers and more advanced technology in some areas, but war was unpredictable. The humans had shown capabilities that no one fully understood. More importantly, did they have the will to start a galactic war over trade routes and territorial disputes? As the third day began, the alien leadership was facing a terrible realization. They had made threats they might not be able to carry out against a species that seemed completely unafraid of the consequences. The humans had not done anything aggressive. They had not made counter threats or prepared for war. They had simply said no and gone back to their normal lives, and somehow that quiet refusal was shaking the foundations of Galactic politics. The most terrifying part was not knowing what the humans would do next. Would they leave the station? Would they cut off all contact with the consortium? Would they simply pretend the entire incident had never happened? The uncertainty was driving the aliens to the edge of panic. They were used to species that fought back, that negotiated desperately, that showed fear or anger or desperation. They had no idea how to deal with a species that simply did not care. On the morning of the third day, High Counselor Dex-9 had not slept. His yellow eyes were dimmed with exhaustion, and his normally perfect scales looked dull and rough. Around him, the other alien leaders were in similar states. Elixians were clicking constantly in distress. The Zephyrites were flashing rapid, chaotic colors that hurt to look at. The emergency session had lasted all night. Reports kept coming in from across consortium space, and none of them made sense. Human colonies were operating normally. Human trade ships were following their usual routes. Human diplomats were attending routine meetings as if nothing had happened. It was as if the entire human species had collectively decided to ignore the most powerful alliance in galactic history. They must be planning something, insisted General Krath 5 for the 100th time. No species acts this way without a reason. What if the reason is that they simply do not care? Asked a Zephyrite delegate. The room fell silent. The idea was too alien for most of them to understand. Every species cared about survival, about territory, about their place in the galactic order. It was the most basic instinct of intelligent life. But what if humans were different? A communication alert chimed through the chamber. A Clixian technician quickly answered it, then looked up with confusion in its compound eyes. Sir, it said to Dex-9, we have a problem. The hegemony of Tau has just announced they are withdrawing from our alliance. Dex-9's eyes blazed brighter. What? Why? They say they do not want to be involved in a conflict with an unknown outcome. They are concerned about what the humans might do if we proceed with our threats. The humans have done nothing, Dex-9 roared. That is exactly the problem, the technician replied quietly. More communication alerts began chiming. One by one, the smaller species that had joined the alliance were backing away. The Pelians announced they needed to reconsider their position. The Morphians declared they required more time to study the situation. Even some of the Voidlings were expressing concerns about the wisdom of threatening humanity. They are all cowards, snarled Krath 5. Or they are smarter than we are, said the Zephyrite delegate. By midday, the great alliance that had taken months to build was falling apart. Half the member species had withdrawn their support. The others were wavering, sending nervous messages about the need for caution and further study. X-9 sat alone in his private office, staring out at the stars. For the first time in his long career, he felt truly helpless. He had commanded armies and negotiated with the fiercest species in the galaxy, but he had never faced an enemy that refused to be an enemy. A soft chime announced a visitor. A door opened to reveal Counselor Vex 3, an older Vorthok with silver scales and wise eyes. You look terrible, Vex 3 said bluntly. I feel terrible, Dex-9 admitted. How did this happen? How did 4 humans destroy our alliance without lifting a finger? Free settled into the chair across from Dex-9's desk. Perhaps that is exactly how they did it. What do you mean? Think about it. What were we really trying to accomplish? We wanted to control human expansion because we feared they would become too powerful. But by threatening them, we have only shown our own fear and weakness. Dex-9 considered this. You think we made a mistake? I think we underestimated them completely. We thought like warriors and politicians, but the humans thought like something else entirely. Before Dex-9 could ask what that meant, another communication alert sounded. This one came directly from the human quarters. Counselor Dex-9, came Kyung-Min's calm voice. We'll be departing Nexus Prime in 2 hours. We wanted to thank you for your hospitality and to say goodbye. Dex 9 activated the communication panel with a shaking claw. Wait, you cannot just leave. Why not? Kungmin asked politely. 'Cause we're not finished here. We still need to resolve this situation. What situation? The question hit Dex 9 like a physical blow. From the human perspective, there was no situation. The consortium had made demands. The humans had declined. End of story. You cannot simply walk away from galactic politics, Dex 9 said, desperately. We are not walking away from anything, Kyungmin replied. We are simply continuing with our lives. If you wish to establish normal diplomatic relations with humanity in the future, you know how to contact us. The communication ended. Dex 9 stared at the silent panel for a long moment. Then he did something he had never done in his political career. He got up and walked to the human quarters himself. The corridor outside the human delegation rooms was busy with activity. The humans were packing their belongings with the same calm efficiency they had shown throughout their stay. Kyo-min was closing his datapack case. Hannah was carefully wrapping her poetry book. Taeho was folding his exercise clothes. Ji-woo was saying goodbye to her small plants, which she was leaving behind for the station's gardeners. Ambassador Dex 9 called out. Kyung-min looked up with mild surprise. Counselor, how can we help you? I need to understand, Dex 9 said. What do you want? What are your demands? What will it take to resolve this crisis? Kyung-min sat down his case and gave Dex 9 his full attention. There is no crisis, Counselor. You created a problem where none existed. We were perfectly happy with the way things were. But you are expanding too quickly. You are taking resources that other species need. We are settling uninhabited worlds and mining asteroids that no one else wanted, Hannah said gently. Okay, we have never taken anything that belonged to another species. You refuse to follow consortium regulations. We were never invited to help create those regulations, Ji-woo pointed out. You made rules about us without asking us. Dex 9 felt his arguments crumbling. What happens now? Do you cut all contact with us? Do you declare war? Could you seek revenge? Kyungmin looked genuinely puzzled. Why would we do any of those things? Because of what we threatened to do to you. You threatened to do many things, Taeho said calmly. But in the end, you did none of them. Threats that are not carried out are just words. But the alliance, Dex 9 said weakly. The ultimatum. Your alliance has fallen apart, Kyungmin observed. Your ultimatum was rejected. What more is there to discuss? Dex 9 felt something break inside his chest. It was not his body, okay? It was his understanding of how the universe worked. For his entire life, he had believed that power came from strength, from the ability to threaten and control others. But the humans had shown him something different. They had power because they did not need power. They were strong because they were not afraid. They had one by refusing to play the game at all. What if, Dex 9 said slowly, what if we started over? What if we approached you as equals, asking for partnership instead of demanding submission? Kian smiled for the first time since the negotiations had begun. It was a warm, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. Counselor, he said, you know where to find us. Okay. An hour later, the human shuttle departed from Nexus Prime. Dex 9 watched it go from the observation deck, along with dozens of other alien officials. The small ship disappeared into the starfield, carrying its 4 passengers back to their ordinary lives. But nothing would be ordinary for the consortium ever again. Word of what had happened spread throughout the galaxy. Within days, the story of 4 humans who had faced down the most powerful alliance in known space simply by saying no and walking away. Other species began to question the consortium's authority. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Territorial disputes were resolved through discussion rather than threats. The balance of galactic politics shifted toward cooperation instead of domination, and in the end, humans got exactly what they had wanted all along. They were left alone to live their lives in peace, which had been their only goal from the very beginning. The most terrifying moment had not been when the humans went silent during negotiations. It had been when the aliens realized that the humans had never been afraid at all. They had simply been patient.